As we've progressed through this course, we've seen how easy it is to add our media to the timeline. Now, I'm going to go through that process again, partially for consolidation purposes, but also because I want to show you different methods of adding media to our timeline, in terms of adding more than one file at one time. And also, we'll add multiple files, and when we do, we'll not only just be adding them to one track, which I will show you, but also across multiple tracks too. Right, let's move to our Explorer tab, and as we've seen before, we get all our media files showing up in here. Now, if we want to simply add one movie file, then just notice where your cursor is on the timeline. Notice it there, and I'm pointing this out because that's where this movie file will be placed if I double-click on it. I'll select a movie file and simply double-click to send it down to my timeline. And there you go. It was added instantly to the timeline at the cursor position. Once the file has been brought in, by the way, notice that the cursor now gets moved to the end of our clip. If I want to move my cursor right to the beginning of the timeline, well, the quick way of doing it is by holding the Control key down and hitting your left arrow key, and that repositions your cursor right at the start. Now what I'll do is I'll play this file, so I'll hit my play button just below our timeline there. Here goes. Okay, so that's one clip that I'm going to use of the band playing live. As we progress making this video for the band, I'm not going to actually use that live recording. I'm going to dub in later the studio recorded version of the song. Anyway, we'll get to that as we progress. Okay, now if I reposition my cursor over here, for example, and as we can see, it's been moved to 41.18 there. And then if I double click on this file, then as predicted, that particular file will be inserted at that time position where our cursor is now. Okay, we've seen previously how easy it is to reposition once it's on the timeline. Just left click on the clip itself and I'll drag it across to the left there so that our gap closes up. We don't want a gap in between those clips. I'm going to resize the track list area here, left click and drag it up, because what I want to show you now is how we can add more than one clip to a similar time position as an already added clip on our timeline. Well, if I just grab another file and I'll left click on it, if I drag it down here onto the timeline into an empty space where there isn't a track featured or created at the present time, and then just deselect our mouse click, notice what happens. Instantly, two new tracks have been created, the video and the audio components of that particular file, and they've been added as track 3 and track 4. Track 3 for the video and track 4 for its embedded audio file. I'll delete what we just added easily by selecting the file and then hitting delete on my keyboard, and this removes it from our timeline. Remembering, of course, it doesn't remove it from our Explorer window, it's just simply removed it from our timeline. And I'll delete the video and audio from track 3 and 4 also, using the same method of selecting it and hitting delete on my keyboard. Now, if I want to add multiple files simultaneously, then just select whichever files you want to select, and I'll grab these 4, and then just left click on any of the files that were selected, and then just drag it down onto my timeline. Now, just before I deselect, notice the containers for these files are in place, so all these different events show with a thin grey border around where they are going to be placed when I deselect like this. And now if I move across to the right along my timeline, then we can see all the video files have been set on the same track in sequence. And as I move my cursor along, and I'll do it for all 4 clips there, well, you can see what these different files look like in my main view. Right, I'm just going to select them all one by one, and again I'll hit delete to remove them from my timeline. Now, what I want to show you is another method of bringing in all these different files onto the timeline, but this time giving us a choice about how they are presented, either on the same track or across multiple tracks. And where this differs from what we've just seen is we now right-click rather than left-click. So I'll right click on a few tracks and then drag down onto the timeline, and as I deselect, notice this pop-up dialog allows me or offers me the choice of whether I want to add these files across time, and that will add them across the same track and will be exactly the same as what we've just seen, or I can add them across different tracks. Now we'll do that in a moment. I just want to show you these other options. Add as takes, video only, and those related options. You could choose to bring in the audio only with those options, or you could indeed just cancel. Notice also the options for video or audio only offer the same options too. Well, for this example, I'll go back up to Add Across Tracks, and as soon as I select that option, then you can see all my different video files with their associated audio have been added at the beginning of the timeline where the cursor is, but now across multiple tracks. You'll notice the track count there has gone up to 6, so if I just come right across to the right to where the scroll bar is, then you'll see all my 6 tracks, 3 video tracks with their 3 related audio tracks, beginning as track 1 and moving down to track 6. Notice though that the top track, video track 1, well, this takes precedence and is the video track in view, obscuring any video tracks below. Now if I select it and hit delete, then now we see video track 2, which at the moment is rather confusingly labelled as track 3, while our second video track is now the track in view, rather than the video track below that. And if I select my second video track and hit delete, then of course we now only see the remaining video track down here. Let's have a quick look at it. I'll hit play. Okay, lots of drumming there. Of course it sounds very live, but we'll tame that when we add the real backing track to it. Okay, so that's how we add media to our timeline, and we get all those different options as we've seen about how we bring our media in.